The last week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about we compared 3-4 and the 4-2-5, and really talked about the really kind of the benefits of using that defense. Talked about how it's hybridized and it's super good as a base defense, especially for newcomers, right? New coaches, new DCs, whatever it happens to be. So
I
we
wouldn't
kind
even,
of
I would say not especially for newcomers. I would say for anybody who needs to establish your foothold. Um, so no matter what the situation, no matter how long you've been coaching, you here's situations that it's great for. You're taking over a program and they're just off. They're the 1-9. Any program 0-10, 1-9, because you just need to stop the bleeding, right? Also, new coordinators, new coaches who need something to keep simple. Also, head coaches who are hiring young coordinators, and you need to give them something, hand them something, and say, "Here." We've had coaches who were handling the offensive duties their whole life, and they're head coach, and they've been with the same defensive coordinator for 25 years, and that guy retired. And it's like I got a new guy coming in, here, run this, and they can get everything they need for it. So really, gosh, I just think I think that when guys look at stuff and say that's for beginners, that number one, it has a stigma to it of like, well, I'm not a beginner. I've been coaching for 3 years.
right,
No, you're still a beginner. But number two,
maybe 10 years, by the way. You're
there's
probably still a
some
beginner.
there's some defenses out. There's some guys out there. I'll give you an example. Tim Murphy, double wing guru, championships out in California, speaks in glaziers for decades, books. Now he calls it a 4-4 because his guys are actually fast. So he doesn't have to convince them that they're fast. See, I got guys that aren't fast, and I got to convince them they're fast. Now we got guys that are fast, but I like to make them feel fast. And also, I got a lot more small guys who are like, I'm not a linebacker.
You're right.
Like, you're right. You're a glorified linebacker.
You're a safety.
Call you a safety. That's what your
So
guys
fast.
get confused about. Well, it's a 4-4. It's like, bro, it's just words. Tim Murphy's an example. Like running straight, again, what he calls 4-4 cover 3. But the execution is phenomenal. You get into this defense, and I know we're talking about how to attack it. You get into this defense, and all these things that we're going to talk about can be stopped by the base defense just executing better. That's it. And so if you get great at the ASCA, at the alignment, stance, key read assignment in the 4-2-5, you can stop everything just about. Cover 3 still has its holes. Add in a secondary coverage like a cover 1, very simple. Get great at playing cover 1 in the offseason, playing 7-on-7, and then run your cover 3 against the teams that don't throw the ball that great and have the adjustments for 2x2. You can win a lot of games. We have a lot of teams that win a lot of games. We have teams that are winning state championships, and they're running this. So yeah, it's great for beginners, but don't undersell it. It's the most overrated thing in football is having a thicker playbook makes you a better coach. Usually makes you a worse coach.
Absolutely. So what are when we start talking about the 4-2-5, and I know we've mentioned this on a previous episode, but what are the weaknesses, especially if I'm looking to scout a 4-2-5 team throughout the week? What are their weaknesses? What am I trying to attack?
You've got I think the first thing is, when you talk weaknesses, your weaknesses come down to count. Can I get numbers? Can I get a numbers advantage? Then you look at, and no matter what you're running, by the way, this isn't 4-2-5 stuff. This is everything. If I can get a weakness in the count, a numbers advantage, then I'm going to absolutely win that game. Unless your guys are just so much better than mine. So when we're looking at attacking a 4-2-5, and this is just our base Pro 2 formation against it. When you're looking at attacking a 4-2-5, you're talking about where are the numbers? Well, it's a balanced defense in its core if you're running a base 4-2-5. So you don't have like a severe numbers advantage up the middle because you've got 2D tackles and 2 linebackers. So there's not a lot of numbers advantage up the middle. You've got not much of a numbers advantage to either side because, again, it's balanced. The only way that you can get a numbers advantage in the off tackle alley area is if the free safety doesn't play his position very well. And a lot of them don't. So if I were looking at a 4-2-5 and they had decent defensive tackles and decent inside linebackers and a free safety who was 18 yards off the ball and backpedaling his way out and never got involved in the play. Right there, I go, well, you're an 8-man front. People go, well, 4-2-5, 4-4, it's supposed to be an 8-man front. No. The free safety ties the front together. The free safety ties the spill to the force. If you want to know what all that means, I'm not going to go into it because it's an offensive podcast, but the free safety ties the spill to the force together. If he's not getting involved, there's a space between spill and force. Great spill guys maybe can minimize that, but I always say, the quality of your free safety is going to determine how good your defense is. Because is that hole at, is he making plays at 8 yards, 3 yards, no yards? That's going to determine how good your defense is. So, if they're just terrible up the middle, that's maybe something to look at, but that's not a 4-2-5 weakness. That's and the free safety not getting involved is not a 4-2-5 weakness, but it's a weakness to look for in a 4-2-5. If I got that, then I would be looking to run a lot of off tackle, kick the overhang safety, or reach the overhang safety depending on his alignment. We'll get in that in a minute. And I don't have numbers to the perimeter because, there's a corner, there's a weak safety, strong safety. I could maybe get a little bit of a numbers advantage if I run trips formations, but that's, again, how do you break a balanced defense? You unbalance your offense. So if you go to 3-by-1 against the 4-2-5, that is taking a balanced defense and unbalancing it. How do they adjust to that? Do they slide the linebackers? How can you attack it and take advantage of it? Most teams don't do a great job taking advantage of trips, but if the first maybe schematic thing to look at is it's a balanced defense. I don't really have an advantage at the middle. I don't really have an advantage off tackle or perimeter in the base, but I definitely have an advantage if I go 3-by-1 and they don't do a good job of adjusting to it. So that's one. So maybe I can go to 3-by-1 and just start to get some space, some leverage. It's not going to help your gap scheme that much, honestly, because it's mostly going to help your perimeter. They're going to stay in a place where your gap scheme isn't going to work, but that's a way to attack it. The second thing to look for is bubbles. The obvious bubble in the 4-2-5 is the weak side B gap. It's better for us as 4-2-5 coaches to play the nose in a weak shade. Better for you as an offensive coach for us to play the nose in a weak shade. So there's a trade-off because that's going to open up that weak side B gap. And now the will backer has to fill it aggressively, and the end can't allow it to open up. The whole thing we do. So the first bubble that you look to attack is the weak side B gap. I would absolutely the strong side A gap is a bubble. It's not a great bubble to attack. And we'll come back to what you can do with it. The strong side C gap could be depending on how the end plays. But a lot of guys are going to play their ends in an inside leverage. They're going to play that end in a 6-eye or a 7, whatever you want to call it, and the C gap is not going to be great. So that's one. Next thing, and by the way, we go through all this in the offensive play caller system, and we go through it in the defensive play caller system from the other side.
Right.
How do you look at your weaknesses? Because it's all questions and answers, and how do you find your weaknesses? The next thing that we look at, and of course, then you go, well, yeah, okay, there's a bubble in the weak side B gap, but the will linebacker is all Americans. Like, well, it's not a good bubble now. But that's all play calling. We're talking just, we're talking last man with the chalk, X's and O's type thing. I always want to look at leverage and angles. I have a great blocking angle on the 3-tech. So that's a nice blocking angle to attack, is the 3-tech for the kick out. I also have a decent blocking angle. It's still weak side B gap, but for our counters, I have a decent blocking angle on the weak side end. So if I want to go that, but those are the best angles that I have. If we look at angles, what angles do I have for blocking? Well, I can kick out your 3-tech. This is from a gap scheme perspective. I can kick out your strong side tackle, your 3 technique. Of course, we have adjustments for that in the 4-2-5, part of the game. I can kick out the 3-tech with an inside trap type play. I can kick out the weak side end with a counter type,
Right.
GT counter or GH counter or GY counter or whatever you want to run. So I have some angles there. Then I look at leverage. We play strong safety, weak safety very wide. And a lot of people don't like it. But they're wrong. And so that's what makes this job great. At some point, just go, what, screw it.
You're just
watched
wrong.
enough film.
Listen, coach, you're wrong. Okay. Widen them out.
Align where they're going and meet them on the way. In the backfield, runs a 4-5. Your strong safety, your glorified linebacker, your guy who wasn't good enough to be the free safety, probably doesn't. If he plays up tight and goes up the field, he creates a vertical seam where I can now run him up the field with someone and take that vertical seam. If he plays up tight and wide, he creates a horizontal seam. And I just got space. And again, if your free safety can't get down there and play that area, then I win. We play him 5-by-5 if there's a tight end, 5-by-1 off of number 2. That way he has time to read it. The ball's not getting on him right now. Then he can attack and he can force. If he's too tight, if he plays in that 3-by-3 area, the 3-by-3 area, I believe that I can use motion or I can do something and I can come down and I can crack him, seal him, or just reach him with if I got a 2-back set, I can just go out there and reach him. But somehow I can create a leverage advantage. So if he's too tight, either horizontally or vertically, I can make a leverage advantage and I can get around him. Again, whether you want to consider toss a gap scheme play, we're not going to really talk much about toss because it's a perimeter play, but the weakness may be to the perimeter. So I look for leverage. And then I look for space, which is kind of irrelevant to our conversation because space is more what we look for in passing game. So space is like, hey, their corner's 9 yards off. I'm just going to throw a hitch, right? He's giving me space. Space is I go 2-by-2 and your weak safety or strong safety stays tucked in at 3-by-3. And I've got a slot receiver sitting out at 8 yards in a corner, I got an uncovered receiver, essentially. I got a bubble. Those are the kinds of things we look for with space against a 4-2-5. So, that's the extensive rundown of the weaknesses to look for in a 4-2-5.
All right, so now we discussed those weaknesses. Why would we want to run gap scheme versus the 4-2-5? And is it really that advantageous?
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing that I didn't mention is red side and white side, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the ability to create combos and numbers in there. But we mentioned trap and counter have tremendous angles. The other one that has a good angle is the angle on the 3-tech on a down block, right? And the ability to run a strong side power against the 3-tech. We like strong side power to the red side, the reduced side, where we have a B gap defender. This is all taught in the pistol power offense system. And so it's a very good front to run trap, strong, trap the 3-tech. So trap the 3-tech strong side. It's a good front to run. Now remember, 4-2-5 guys or prospective 4-2-5 guys. All of this is fixed by playing with the correct technique. But we live in a world where a lot of people aren't. So I can trap the 3-tech. Try to. I got a good angle on him. I can kick out the weak side end. I got a good angle on him for the counter. I've got a good angle set up for the combo on the 3-tech. You know, we from the 4-2-5 side go, that's great. He's our iguana. Like he's going to be in there. 2-man cannot block him. One man cannot move him. So come at him. But X's and O's, everybody's a 1 right now. We're not counting anybody as a 2, not counting anybody as a half. Everybody's just an X and an O on a napkin. We got great angle for the down block on the 3-tech. If you play a 6-tech, we can also get the Y inside on that if we use a tight end. So if we play a 6-tech, we can also get the Y to the backside linebacker, and we've got a good setup for running power against it. And then weak side ISO. So those are the 4 gap scheme plays that I would like against this. And you may be a zone scheme guy and go, hey, let's look really good against inside zone for the
Right.
cutback. I do too. It's one of those fronts that if you suck at it, it's kind of good against a lot. You know, there's a lot of things that are good against it, just like anything else. But if you are, you know, and if you go take your strong safety, weak safety, and you screw them down tight, you're pretty good against power and counter, and you spill it. But now you've opened up other weaknesses, and that's the case. That's the case in every front. You close off weaknesses, you open up weaknesses. So why would I want to use gap scheme against it? Because I have some good angles, and I really like gap scheme against even fronts. Maybe some gap schemes more so. You know, I don't run an ISO against an odd front because I don't know what's going to be open. You know, is the defensive end going to slant into B gap, or is he going C gap? I don't want to run a trap necessarily because if he's crashing hard on me, it's tougher to kick him out. It's not impossible by any means to trap an odd front, but you know, it might be a little bit tougher depending on what they do. It might be easier too if you have a really good 3-tech who can squeeze the guard. You know, against an odd front, I really like zone schemes. You know, against a 4-3, I don't like anything.
Don't play the 4-3 against Joe.
Do
play it.
You should. Well, see, the thing about the 4-3 is that the 4-3 adds 1 to the count. So for us, the 4-3 can be tough to play in the box. If you're playing a good Miami 4-3, it can be really tough to play in the box because you have 7 in the box. But that should open up some perimeter game for us. Maybe open up the passing game for us as well, depending on how you're doing it. Then we look at, you know, how do you play 3x1 and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's why, you know, 4 of the top gap scheme plays are good in theory against a 4-2-5 if the defensive linemen aren't squeezing the hell out of down blocks. And so many teams aren't. And that's why when we get into our coaching systems, we're like, look, here's what you need to do with your defensive line. You need to take the hoops and the shoots and the ladders and all the other stuff from the and forget that these things are not Dale Basquette approved with our speed training. Forget that, because they're not. But and that they're not on the field. Here's the fact. If you can't squeeze a down block in the 4-2-5, you're screwed. And so you're spending a bunch of time in Indy just wearing your guys out, and you go out there on Friday night and your guys go straight up the field and they get kicked out and they get demolished. And if they're flying up the field like wild animals and they're destroying every play 3 yards in the backfield, you probably played a bad team. If you're that much better than everybody in your league, giddy up. But don't feel like you out-coached anybody. You might have out-motivated somebody. You might have out-drafted somebody if you're in a youth league or something, or out-recruited if you're in college. But you didn't do anything, because if you're getting up the field in this defense, it's not going to work. Not for very long. So it's a great front to run gap schemes against, because so many teams don't do a good job of running this gap scheme.
So our last question was supposed to be, what gap scheme plays would you run against it? But we just basically just covered that. So,
Well,
I guess really, if someone's successful with the gap scheme against us, let's make this offensive. If I'm being very successful with the gap scheme and someone starts answering those questions, what's next? So what do I go to next?
I think first let's talk about what you need to do in those gap schemes to be good against a 4-2-5.
Love it. Way better question.
I've been doing this for a little bit. This is my second day. Start with the trap. The trap is so basic and so easy. And it, like, can you run a dive A gap? Sure. Like, if the Mike linebacker, like, dive shouldn't work, by the way. If you draw up dive, I see teams run just straight dive with no misdirection, no anything off of it. And it's just like straight, fullback dive out of the eye. And it's like, that should not work. It should not work. Inside zone should, because it has enough time for the combos to work their action and everything. Right. Straight dive really shouldn't. I mean, it can't. It doesn't work. 4-2-5 or 4-3. It's like it's dead in the water. But 4-2-5, it shouldn't work. But so the first thing is trap. You have got to, first of all, base block the nose, which is not easy. You have to be able to base block the nose and handle the nose. So that's why we play that guy, that tilted. We will play him in a tilt. And if you come to base block him, we'll try to cross face. Some teams will, some teams won't. I go back and forth on, what I like, but that nose may try to cross face that base block because he knows the guard's coming across or whatever. But the key here is you need to come tight with your kick out block, with your trap block, and get up into the line of scrimmage. You need to get up into the line of scrimmage on a trap. And
this is really the answer to all gap scheme plays, right? Like, it seems like we're always talking about get back inside the line of scrimmage or get back in your offensive line.
If you do the old pull the lawn, here's something that's really critical for somebody who's coaching offensive line and you haven't coached offensive line since you were a player.
Or ever.
There's
those people.
And this is in a lot of books and stuff, right? When you teach them to pull, you teach them to pull the lawnmower, right? And he cranks that elbow so he gets his shoulders turned so he can go straight down the line of scrimmage and just get spilled like he was never there.
Or whatever they're trying to teach you back in the day, maybe.
Assuming that tackle has been taught to squeeze a down block, he is going to turn his shoulders or shuffle either way, and he's going to come underneath you if you do that. So your pull must be right off the hip, toes, whatever, of the center. The center's got to get out. If that nose does a good job of stuffing him, it can be difficult. and you've got to get up into the line of scrimmage and you've got to attack the inside number of that puller. You cannot let him get of that defensive lineman. You cannot let him get underneath you. The second thing is it must hit fast. So you can't run the trap very well against the front like this with a single back 6 yards off. Trust me, I've tried it. And I've run it with the quarterback. I tried it just to see. I've run it with the quarterback just to see. Catch and go. It's not, the timing's just not there. It's that quick, wing tee, 3.5 yards sniffer fullback. It's a fullback in an I formation, hitting it right now, and then following the trapper up into the hole. Because if you can do that, you don't have to block anyone else. And that's an advantage now, because you've created essentially a numbers advantage where you've got, or at least a numbers advantage. You don't have a numbers advantage. You've got even numbers, which is a disadvantage. I got 4 blockers and a running back. I guess it is a number on your 4 guys. The next guy, You've got free safety. So
who's not tackling a fullback? Can we just be honest?
Well,
Mike
best player on
Allstott
the field. He's not tackling him for anything good. He might get a 6-yard gain, right? It's not good. But he'll get around the ankles there. He'll take him down.
Having said all that, is a pistol offense less advantageous against a 4-2-5? If we're running pistol, should we reconsider?
Only because you can't
trap?
Run the trap, but how many things are you going to be good at?
Well, a lot of people just say power and counter and let's ride. So
I would have a talk. I mean, here's the problem: if you just go power and counter and let's ride, you got nothing up the middle and you got nothing in the perimeter. All right.
Touche.
All you've got is off tackle.
Take that, Twitter.
Off tackle strong, off tackle weak. So now we go, all right, I need an up the middle play. Okay, that can be trap. Trap's a good play. I also like inside zone. I just talked about, trap isn't probably as good at times against an odd front. I don't like it as much. I don't like with the nose. I don't like with all that stuff. Got to hit longer. The angle is different for the back, all sorts of stuff. But the pistol gives me a better inside zone look. It gives me a better off tackle, outside zone look. I can run those things, right? Not necessarily better, but I can run those things. Pistol also gives me better in general passing than if you're an I formation,
right? Or
wing T that has a guy. If you look at just the teams that are in position to run or to run the trap, having a back that close, it's an I formation and a wing T. Well, what do we know about those? They're not real good at passing. So they've chosen their thing to be great at. Did we run inside trap once or twice last year? Yeah, I think so. Is it good? No, not really. I've tried to run it multiple times. It's never been great for us. It's done some good things in practice. And honestly, sometimes I put it in a shift. We'll shift to power I and put that kid at the power back spot. That's like a defensive lineman or a linebacker, and he's just a nut who can go hammer somebody, and we can run some zone lead out of it, and we can have him kick out or wrap. And I'll just throw in a play to practice it where it's like, we're going to give you the ball. And, I try to run games, but we don't always get to. And I never expect it to be like gangbusters, but like if it pops, cool. It's we're not going to call it in a crucial situation, but if I get a chance in a game to, I practice it a couple times. And if I get a chance in the game to call it and give a kid a ball because we shifted into power I and brought him over from the defensive side for this little series, then let's try to get it done.
Fullback by substitution of defensive players. I love it.
Yeah.
Run it.
I love it.
All right, so outside of trap and dive, so we've got power counter.
So now you go off tackle. You got some angles there. You've got the red side, the combo on the 3 tech.
Talk to me about red and white side. You said it. We talked about reduced. What do those mean? And I know somebody needs to pay for probably some JoeDanielFootball.com. Get access for $1, 7 days. Go over there right now. But if they don't have it yet, without giving too much, what is red and white?
So red and white side just mean it's a Bill Mountjoy. I'm sure it came from somewhere else, but if you go back to like old 50 front or whatever defense that had a true 5-2, right? Old school. And then you started getting eagle fronts and all this kind of stuff, eagle week and everything in different terms. So the wide side is where the B gap is open. So the guard is uncovered, basically, is what we're looking at. So most of your odd front 404, 3-4s, and stack fronts, the both sides are white, both sides are wide. And then when you start dropping a guy down into that B gap, you start reducing. That's the red side. So wide is white, reduced is red. And when you get that red side, now B gap is closed. That gives you the ability to kind of cave that side down. So, wide side, I want to run inside of him. B gap, ISO, inside zone. Red side, I want to combo him, power, and I can run trap to that side. So that's the red and white side.
So,
yep.
So you talked about it being a 50 front call. So when we start getting into a nose guard setting an A gap and an end in C gap, are we still? Is that
That's
still kind of? Okay.
That's the wide side. B gap's open is the easiest way to call it. B gap's open, wide side. B gap's closed, reduced side, red side.
Touche.
That's really the easiest way to say it. So when you get that strong side power, I think one of the biggest mistakes that is made is letting that tackle come off the combo too soon. I want to get against a 4-2-5. And this is where the pistol, where our offense is a little bit more advantageous than if you were just an I formation power team. If you drop that defensive end down into C gap in a 6-eye, and we can't run the Y inside of him to the backside linebacker, our power is not as good, because now he can potentially make that play. We've lost a count. We'll try to punch him, get the end wide enough to get his attention, and then we'll arc release to the strong safety, but it's not as good. And there's not enough time to go over top of him. In our situation, what he's done for us by going down and playing C gap and declaring C gap is he's made our outside zone better. Because now my Y can seal him, we can overtake with the tackle, and we're off to the races with outside zone. Because he's declared inside, and my back knows I'm not cutting it back. And I'm not cutting back C gap because he's living in C gap.
Right.
So as long as my Y can get inside of it, that's going to be a big help. Can I get the combo? The kick out block is the same. I got to get up the field into the line of scrimmage with the kick out, whether it's an H-back, fullback, whoever it is. He's got to get up in the line of scrimmage, because that guy's going to be squeezing the crap out of the Y, and he should be trying to spill it. But it all hinges on, to me, really, can you combo? And when I teach this, it's a double team unless somebody sticks their nose in A gap. Unless the Mike sticks his nose in A gap, in which case my wrapper, my backside guard, is wrapping to the free safety. If the strong safety wants to stick his nose in there, and then we're going to play action him the next play, is the backside linebacker sticking his nose in that gap, in which case my Y is on the free safety or something. I want a double as much as possible on your 3-tech, because I expect him to be really good. And so can they win that? If the 3-tech wins that combo, which is ideally a double, you're not going to be very good at this. right? It's not going to work. So that's what I'm looking for out of that. And then I'll add one more. The running back needs to not go outside because we don't have anything for your OLBs. And we're kicking out your end. And these running backs that want to bounce everything outside. Remember what we're doing. We're trying to block backside numbers, and we want the will scraping and all this stuff. If he will stay tight against this front, and we collapse that double team down the line of scrimmage, it's an A-gap run play with a 65-yard cutback. If we do it right.
Right.
We tell them the money's inside, the money's inside, the money's inside. But there's a lot of teaching with the offensive line that goes into making that work, and the H-back. Counter, no different than the trap. That pulling guard coming to kick out the defensive end has got to get up into the line of scrimmage. Whatever counter you're running, doesn't matter if it's GT, if it's GH, if it's any of those. You must get that kick out really digging up into that defensive end so that he can't squeeze it down and spill you. Good down blocks and all that kind of stuff, but that's the difference maker, is kicking out that kicking out the weak side end as we're running it. We're trying to run it to the white side, counter to white side play, a reduced side play. Strong side is red, weak side is white against 4-2-5. And then what do we leave out? ISO,
pin and pull, ISO.
Well, just the four that we're talking about, the ones that we really like, because we're not going to pin and pull. Technically, theoretically gap scheme, but I mean, those are plays that the front doesn't really matter. It's about what's on the perimeter.
Touche.
ISO. It's got to hit fast, or they've got to not be good. I mean, because to me, ISO is really depending on or you're real good. ISO is depending on we're gonna kick your butt, and our fullback is going to demolish you. If their will or whatever linebacker, actually that should be, if their will linebacker, assuming that you're ISOing the weak side B gap, comes downhill and fills the inside half of the gap like a man, and we fill the inside half of the gap. If he'll do that, it will spill as long as your defensive end doesn't go up the field. But if the will linebacker is slow to react, or you are just so fast hitting this play, it can be very difficult. And they'll have to move to a 2-eye, or they'll have to slant the end inside, or they'll have to blitz the will linebacker. But what I see with the play, and this is why I'm hesitant to be like, how do you make you make it good by them not doing everything right, or it's got to hit really fast. The ISO usually works because the defensive end runs up the field and doesn't compress the gap. Or it works because the will linebacker is slow to react and gets blown out. But if the defensive end keeps B gap a reasonable size, and the will linebacker attacks the lead blocker, and the only space that is there is the little bit of airspace where, I mean, if you got a 180-pound linebacker, let's make him relatively small, but not tiny. You got a 180-pound linebacker.
So not a D1 linebacker.
And you got not a D1 linebacker. A regular high school linebacker and a regular high school fullback. We've still got about, 350, 400 pounds of beef in that gap, right?
Sure. I'm for it.
If we have 350, 400 pounds of beef in that gap, there's no gap.
Right.
There's no gap. You create the gap by the end going up the field and creating a vertical seam. In which case, that 300 pounds of beef is there, but then there's a space between whatever's outside of that and the defensive end that ran 5 yards up the field. And I see teams run ISO, and they, how do they block the weak side end? They pass at him.
Right.
It's not a bad idea.
No, it's not.
They pass at him, then your safety's got to be able to fold in.
That attacking
4-yard gain.
D line thing caught fire for a while, and I think people made it.
Right. Pass at him.
Yeah.
So, I think the ISO is a good play. I think you should try it. I think it will probably work sometimes. But again, I think that a really well-coached 4-2-5 is going to handle it. And that's the case in all of these. You've got to go testing in your offense, watching film, saying, where is the actual weakness? Because it's what we can do something like this. And I have guys ask me, hey, can you just tell me what to run against this? I really can't. Because we got to look at the film, and we got to look at what their players are doing. We got to look at what's working, because if the 3-tech spills like an animal and they got a good nose who will cross face on a base block, trap ain't there.
Better get wide.
So now you got to figure out, where can I go? Well, maybe I can do ISO because I got a good angle on the nose. Well, okay, if the will backer screams downhill and feels like a man, and the defensive end holds his ground and holds his point, it's going to bounce now to an unblocked safety, free or weak. And again, if the free safety doesn't run downhill, I've got opportunities for not so much gap schemes, but maybe like the pin and pull type of stuff, maybe like a dart, but more likely like an outside zone, or perhaps a toss, pin and pull type scheme. Because that's the free safety not getting down there. If the weak side end is going to squeeze down, he's going to kill your counterplay. If the 3-tech is just dominant, you're not running power. If the strong end can play in a 6 and still whip the snot out of your down blocking Y, then power is going to be real hard. So there's all that said, a good fundamental 4-2-5 can take these away. But these are the things that you go out there and you test and you poke and you prod, and you find one of them that I can do. You find out, like again, I say this and it sounds like, well, the 4-2-5 can stop anything. No, how many teams are actually this well coached? Not very many. How many teams are this? Because you got to have
the same thing about every defense, right? Like,
yeah, how many defenses other than your top defenses? How many of them have great coaches and solid players across the board? Like, it's not even like, well, their coordinator or their head coach or whatever. It's like, yeah, they just got a new defensive line coach and he's finding his way. Linebackers or whatever, he's finding his way. So you poke and you prod, or the starting 3-tech may be a man, but if I run at him 13 times, we saw that when we've seen this with different lots of different positions. I remember we had a pretty good Mike linebacker. He was 180 pounds. This is a 4-3. And we had a team that in the 4-3, the Mike linebacker fills the weak side ISO. And we had a team that ran ISO. And when I ran ISO, had a good sized fullback. Wasn't tremendous, but good size. And again, we had a 180-pound Mike linebacker who was one of the crazy kids. And he hit that kid so hard that for 3 quarters, it was a war. And eventually, the fullback, who was heavier, he was not huge, but maybe he was 220, that wore on him, wore on our Mike linebacker. They wore out our Mike linebacker. So it's like, there may not be a weakness there right away, but you might create a weakness if you're that physical of a team. You might have an injury. They might show up and all of a sudden, hey, number 56 that was their weak side defensive end, he's over there in a boot. right? Counter just opened up because chances of them having 5 kids who can squeeze and spill and do all of that, it's lower than having 4, and 4 is tough. So, you've then got to go look at, and then you start looking at matchups and you start looking at all kinds of stuff that goes into this. You can't just paint by numbers. Here's how to beat a 4-2-5, and you can't do it with anything.
So let's talk for a minute because it's pretty hot right now. You start looking wing tee, you start looking like buck sweep series or buck series period, right? We got belly, we got buck. Are those things, do they feed off one of these concepts? I consider buck power. Like I truly do, right? Or maybe even maybe counter. Like it's, you got a puller and you got a wrapper, a kick out and a wrap. Belly is just ISO. So is that where those fit? If I'm going to attack, is that the same concepts I'm looking for?
Well, yeah, belly is just ISO. Buck will often take the Y and the H down on the end, right? And
yes.
So the kick will be on the safety, and your safety can't spill that because who's he spilling to?
Right.
And this is where buck sweep becomes so good because, and we didn't even mention this with the 4-2-5 and numbers. And this is probably one of the first things you need to look at is, do their linebackers match pullers? Because it's a balanced defense, but when I pull the backside guard, does that will fire and trigger on that backside guard pull and match numbers and cross the center and look for the first open door past the center? Because if he doesn't, when I pulled that guard, I just created a numbers advantage.
Right.
Same thing when I pull that front side guard. If the Mike linebacker is just going to bury his face in a gap because he's too tight to the line of scrimmage, he's going to let the wing collapse down the end and come off and seal him. If that happens, because he doesn't react to the outside pull, then I have a numbers advantage off tackle. So, and then the third thing is if the free safety sits back and sees the buck action and doesn't fill the alley, and you have an true 8-man front because your free safety is not getting actively involved and playing like a 9th man, you have numbers in the alley. If you're going to pull and you're going to down my defensive end and you're going to kick my strong safety, and I get a scraping linebacker and a free safety running downhill like a man, then that's how I'm going to stop that play. If the linebackers don't react to pullers, if the free safety isn't up there playing like a linebacker who's against a good running wing tee, playing like a linebacker who's 8 yards deep, then it's probably not going to work.
Gotcha.
And the belly, the thing that's tough about the belly is when they run the red and blue formation and it hits so fast, because it can hit fast in the belly. I mean, it really can, where that wing just loops in and into that A gap. That's tough. But again, because the will's not getting he's not seeing the lead blocker. The lead blocker's coming like out of his vision. You could key him as the near back, but he's still got a key. So what he's got to see is no pull fill. Does he fill on no pull fill? If he fills on no pull fill, that key read, that guy didn't pull, so I'm coming downhill, then I can stuff that. But if he's waiting to see backfield flow, gonna hit him too fast. It's gonna be a cross block and it's gonna hit him too fast. And then you're dependent on, it's fine if it hits him too fast, unless he gets hit 4 yards up, and then your defensive end can't do anything about it. And you're dependent now on your weak safety folding in. And if he's up the line of scrimmage, he can't fold in from there. And now the whole thing's just crap. Just absolute garbage. And then you get the guy on Facebook going, 4-2-5 can't stop a wing T. How do you know? Well, I ran the wing T against a really poorly coached 4-2-5 and it can't stop it. Like, you got it, buddy. Can't stop it.
Schedule us a game, huh?
I mean, can't stop it. I'm not saying we don't dominate the wing T because our guys aren't perfect across the board. But we do better than the poorly coached one.
Right. All right, man. We talked gap scheme against 4-2-5. I think we've checked all the boxes, unless there's any just things out there you just think need to be put out at this point in the podcast.
No, nothing sticks out, but all of this is universal, right? All of this is if you tried to run these gap scheme plays against a 4-2-5 and it didn't work, and you don't know why, these are the things to check. If you ran your 4-2-5 and a team ate you alive with gap scheme, these are the things to check. It's universal. Football's not that hard. I mean, this is probably like if you're brand new to it, this sounds like a lot. But these are the basics of every position, right? These are the basics of every position, but I see them every single day being coached, either being coached wrong or not being coached. The details not being coached. And I hate that you're either coaching it or allowing it because I think that's crap.
It's my thing, coach.
It's garbage.
I say it all the time.
It's wrong.
You make me feel like a terrible coach.
I know. That's what I'm here for.
Now, I don't like you anymore for like
I understand
two straight minutes.
So I understand the sentiment behind it.
Thank you.
The way that it gets used a lot is like, well, that's not working because you're letting it not work. And
see, I don't use it for that. I use it for discipline issues. See, this is why coaching sayings they're not blanket statements.
Not blanket statements. But a lot of coaches are using it for you coaching or allowing it, coach. And you're like, oh, you didn't squeeze the down block. But you're either coaching or allowing it. And I'm like, I've been working on down blocks.
I'm coaching Nothing it and else. It's happening. Now what?
And here's the problem. I have a 16-year-old human. And he's not always going to be perfect. And it's like you take away the human aspect, like we're just coaching robots. I think I mentioned on the podcast, because you're trying to imprint these and make these automatic. Guys say it's got to be habit.
Right.
I loved Brian Kitely, I think, leadership guy on Twitter. There he goes, Twitter. But Brian Kitely, if you search for him, Kightly, Nightly without the N. Was like habits are all, I forget how he said it, but let's just kind of, habits are bullcrap, right? Because what you're looking for with habits is you want habits to make it easy.
Right.
Well, if I get in the habit of going to the gym will be easy. I'll wake up every day. I'll be on autopilot at 5:30 in the morning, and I'll just wake up and my car will be at the gym because it's a habit. Like, that's not how it works. Like,
if anybody has that going on, let me know your secrets, because my gym is my garage and I don't use it. So
it's a lot of guys do get up and do that every day, and they're like, well, it's got to be a habit. It's like, no, you have there's so much to it. I can't imagine if you were in a world where maybe you never miss a day. That's a thing. But I think there's days where you have to make yourself not miss a day. I don't know that you can ingrain any habit. I do Olympic weightlifting. We have 2 lifts, technically 2 lifts, but one of them combined, so snatch and clean and jerk. So all I do. I mean, I do a bunch of other accessories, but that's the only one I care about how I do it. And I've been doing this for 7 years. I mean, I started when I was 15 or 14 or whatever, and I was coached then for a while too. And I took 20 years off. But for the last 6-7 years, I've been doing this. And I swear 2 lifts are the same. And I have to think how I'm going to do this every single time. Like, that's squeezing a down block. Squeezing a down block is not, as much as you want it to be, he goes down, I squeeze, and I go into a rage blackout, squeeze down, and blow up whatever's there. As soon as I see that guy go down. There's so much to the strike and the squeeze. It's the same thing. There's so much to the pull and the kick out. Is like, that kid thinks through it every single time, right? He's going through the checklist, alignment, stance, key. So he's lining up. He's getting his feet right on his alignment. And then he's getting into his 3-point stance. And then he's locking his eyes on that bottom corner of the outside number. And then he's coming off to strike it. And like, he trips over that long grass, because that team knows that we're running athleticspeedandmovement.com.
Iguanas.
Trips over that long grass, because every time that he's done it, the grass has been cut down, because he plays for the fast team. And our grass is shaved close. But they know we're the fast team, and their grass is long. And so now all of a sudden that thing isn't the same every single time, because he pick his foot up just a little bit more than he did before. And you say, well, either coaching or allowing it. And I'm like, I didn't ran out of time to grow the grass to get him to work, get him a chance to work on it.
AKA, we bought turf.
It's fine. You played by turf?
And then what? Now you can't even let the turf grow long.
Can't even let the turf grow long.
You're messing up the iguanas concept here.
Now every time he plays on grass, short or long, it's a different world.
That's right.
Or he plays on better turf or worse turf. Because you know some of that turf's falling apart.
Some of it's like 10 years old. You know that?
Yeah.
People just let it get old.
All turf is not good.
Most turf is not good, but that's not the point.
But at least you can practice on it and not worry about, getting
old.
Well, like we get all the grass is dead and it rained for 3 days and you can't go out there because you'll never be able to use it again. We had to play a playoff game. We had to play a playoff game 2 hours away because our field was completely destroyed. And the state said, you got to find a turf field to play on. Everybody in the state had to find a turf field to play on. We couldn't play on our home field. No, it was unplayable. It was legitimately unplayable. It was unsafe to play on our field. 2A football.
It's part of it. It's part of it. Let's go.
It was unsafe.
All right.
Didn't help us either way.
We've done all the things. We talked about all the things. Let's pay some bills. Join Joe Daniel Football. John Joe, whatever his name is. Join.joedanielfootball.com. Get access for $1 today. Go there now. For $1, you get 7 days access. 4 defensive packages, 4-3, 4-2-5, which we talked about tonight, attacking. Notice Joe said many times, this is a very good defense. It's kind of hard to attack if you just coach it correctly. And guess what? At joedanielfootball.com, you figured out how to coach it correctly. Put your whole staff on there, and they'll know how to coach it correctly. And you can coach what you know, because you all know the 4-5. 3-3 stack, and then also the 3-4. All one system. If you want to be multiple, in fact, just last night, which is 2 weeks ago last night now, because the way that podcasting works, we talked about how to be multiple with the 4-2-5, how to run an odd front in your 4-2-5, running some weird version of a 3-4/3-5. It was amazing. Great job, Joe. Loved it. Sure, it's not truly a 3-4, but yeah, it is. Let's go. Pistol Power offense system is also built in there. So if you're looking to attack the 4-2-5 in your wherever you're at, preseason, if you want to do it at team camp, you want to do it during your season. If someone in your league has got the 4-2-5, it's covered. Chalkboard forums, bi-weekly Chalk Talks. Now we are probably like 4 weeks when this comes out, 6 weeks from going back to being weekly.
Probably 4 weeks, yeah.
Man, we're getting close. It's almost game time again. Yep. And then, of course, the game film analysis, which is where Joe or one of his very, very smart, high football IQ coaches will tell you about all the little things you're doing wrong with your game film. It's actually, I've been looking at some game film lately and just trying to coach some guys through some stuff, and it's not a bad gig. And it's pretty cool just to send your stuff in and let someone else tell you about the dumb stuff that you didn't see. Because I've been on both sides of that now. And sometimes you just miss a thing.